Hello, I'm Jason Delmar. I'll be taking you through my business plan to expand O'Reilly Auto Parts into Kenya. Here are the subjects that I'm going to cover over the next 10 minutes. We'll start with O'Reilly Auto Parts, which is a major automotive aftermarket parts seller. They have over 80,000 employees and over 5,000 stores throughout the U.S. and Mexico, which they just recently expanded into last year, buying and taking over 21 stores. Okay, they've had over nearly 3 decades of growth, and last year their sales were over $10 billion. I think they have a great opportunity to continue to expand beyond North America. Okay, the African market has 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world. Okay, there are over 1 billion consumers and 22 million vehicles on the road, which is a $15 billion industry that is mostly untapped. Getting parts in Africa for the vehicles, which are typically older and from a wide variety of makers, is very difficult. They often have to be sent away for or manufactured on site. So they're usually re-exported through the UAE. So there's a real opportunity there to go into Africa. Specifically, I looked at East Africa. The 3 countries I looked into were Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania. For what I hope would be obvious reasons, I did not look into Somalia. Ultimately, I settled on the leader of the area and what is considered to be the hub of East Africa, Kenya, and even further, more research into the 2 key cities there, Nairobi, the capital, and Mombasa, its major port. Okay, Kenya. It's got a very 50 million person population that is young, educated, very entrepreneurial. They are certainly leaning forward. Okay, its GDP, while that number of 3,500 may not seem big to us, it is the leader in Africa. And they've got over 6% growth. Okay, and relatively decent inflation, as well as a stable currency. And language is a big factor. English is the common language and the language of government. So that will make our integration into the economy a lot easier. Okay. Politically, there are some risks out there. Okay, specifically politically, okay, they have high corruption, which is something we have to deal with, especially in the government. Okay, and they have struggled over the last 13 years with their democracy. They were very peaceful for about 40 or 50 years, and then in 2007, 2008, they had some election issues that kind of brought up some long-standing issues between different tribes and segments of the population. And they really have struggled with their election and their government over the last decade and a half. Okay, the economy is kind of a mixed bag. It's very high in relative ease of doing business. However, it's considered poor economic freedom, and a lot of that is government intervention and we're having to deal with that. Okay, overall, they're adjusting to globalization. Technology-wise, they're a leader in Africa. Nearly everyone has a cell phone, and they have the highest percentage of people using the internet. Okay, legal is very good in terms of the environment. While there may be poor infrastructure throughout the country, which will make things more difficult, Nairobi is a major center of activity, major hub, big airport, and Mombasa is a huge port of East Africa and gateway to the area, region. Some other things culturally, okay, it is very warm and welcoming people. They are very traditional. Okay, they have some similarities to the U.S. in terms of masculinity and uncertainty avoidance, which should help us work well with them. On the other hand, though, power distance and their individualism is different. Okay, they're a much more collectivist society, which means that their family and tribal obligations may trump work responsibilities. However, I think many companies have been able to work in Kenya. They've been able to work with us. Okay, time management, time adherence is something that, and work ethic is something that is something they're adjusting to, that I kind of mentioned, adjusting to globalization. It's interesting, I found 2 different articles from Kenyan writers. One says that we as Kenyans need to improve our work ethic and get on the Western standards. The other one says, the West needs to relax a little bit and go with our time standards. So it's interesting seeing them kind of adjust to a bit more of a modern world. In terms of relationships and customer service, they look at long-term relationships, not just one-time only interactions. And they expect good quality customer service. Many businesses in Africa and Kenya fail because they do not have good customer service. They're always chasing new customers as opposed to keeping existing customers happy. Again, overall risks, as I've mentioned before, there is going to be corruption levels, especially in the government, that we'll have to work with. Okay, the economic freedom can change very quickly, and then of course the infrastructure is poor again. But risk is things can change very quickly in different countries in Africa, and Kenya is no exception. Things can be very peaceful and stable, and then very quickly not be. So it is a risk going in. All right, strategy. The overall strategy is, as opposed to buying a bunch of stores, is really just a small localization, small-scale entry with a store in Nairobi, which would be on the east side of the town near the airport, and in Mombasa, which would be probably more in the near the port area. That's where we'll go into a store in each place. Okay, the basic concepts is that we're going to do is we want to have a large inventory, a wide inventory, not necessarily a deep inventory. We want to figure out what parts are really needed there and try and have those consistently stocked. That's part of it. The other part of the strategy is quick shipping. Most of our sending of parts will come from our U.S. distribution centers and be sent air freight to these stores directly. Okay, which may be a bit more expensive, but we want to be quick shipping. We want to have a good inventory. All right. The marketing plan will be a mixture of push and pull. Okay, the push part we'll try and get in with local auto shops, with transportation companies, with the government, and sell directly to them. Enter in relationships with them. We want those businesses that need parts quite often to come to us, to think of us first when they need a new alternator. Okay, pull part will have a bit kind of more based on what Coca-Cola had done in Kenya, where it's a bit where they do a kind of a wide advertising, mostly through radio and flyers, and it's customized working with the local firm to make sure we get it in the right, not only English but Swahili, and it's customized to the area. In addition, we try and sponsor local events such as local soccer or football leagues, that sort of thing. Okay, so it's a mix. Okay, personnel plan. Overall, a few things on the personnel plan. It will be 9 U.S. or current O'Reilly employees, expats, and 33 Kenyans. That's the initial personnel plan. 3 teams. You have a regional team led by a regional manager. Okay, and then you have 2 stores. Each has a store manager and 2 other expats, along with 15 employees. Okay. The key on all of these people will actually be the assistant manager of each store. That will be the senior Kenyan in each area. Okay, that's the key person. That person will help us hire and fill out the rest of the staff. And the long-term goal is that that person someday becomes the manager, whether at these initial stores or future expansion. Okay, finances. It's going to cost some money up front. Startup cost is going to be over $1 million. And and year 1 costs will also be about another $3 million, with revenue the first year being $3 million. We will lose money the first 2 years actually, and not actually break even until year 3. Okay, some things on this. I've estimated that costs will rise about 5% every year with inflation, but I think our sales will grow at about 25% each year. Okay, this is what I consider almost worst case scenarios. I think as we get on the ground in Kenya, as we learn the market, we will become more efficient and our costs will actually go down. But in this current worst case scenario, we will actually turn a profit in year 2 and fully break even in year 3. All right, corporate social responsibility. Basically 4 things. We want to set the example. We're not going to impose O'Reilly's values on the Kenyans, but we want to set the example of responsible business, not only for the Kenyans but also for other businesses coming in. Harmonic pricing strategy. Okay, our goal is not to be predatory and drive out local business. We want to find our spot, be good quality, and find our spot, and really kind of integrate into the economy. Support local manufacturing. If we can find local businesses, mom and pops type stores that sell or manufacture auto parts, when they're up to O'Reilly standards, we should use them. An example I found was a company in Nairobi that makes air filters. And if they're good enough for us, we should stock them. And our goal should be 10% of local manufacturing stock in our stores. This will also bring down overall costs. And finally, community reinvestment. I think it's a goal that 5% of all profits should go back into the community. Okay, so bottom line, Africa, Kenya, it's a huge market opportunity. And in terms of auto parts, I think it's extremely untapped. Okay, South Africa has its own auto parts stores, but the other 53 countries in Africa really don't. So I think it's a huge opportunity. We can be first in the business, okay, and really establish ourselves. Big risk, big reward, as I said earlier. Yeah, things can change very quickly over there. Things can get unstable over there. But ultimately, our key will be in having the right people, both the people, the expats, the U.S. personnel we send over there, and the Kenyans we hire. Okay, what is really important is we've got to make sure they've got room to make decisions and to make adjustments as come up. I worked in 11 different countries over 9 years in Africa, and the biggest thing about each one of those countries is that oftentimes you didn't know what the big issue was going to be. So we have to make sure that we have the right people there and that they're given both the monetary support and the decision-making authority to make things work on the ground. Right? That's the ultimate key of this proposal. Now you may be wondering how I came up with this idea of selling auto parts in Africa. Burundi, 2012, I was riding in this lovely Land Cruiser after a long day of work when all of a sudden I heard a thunk and the car came to a skidding halt. That's because the tire literally came off of the vehicle and rolled for about 200 or so meters down the road. Now, thinking back to what they could have used there, maybe some better parts there to replace the busted vehicle. With that, this concludes my presentation. I look forward to your questions and comments on the forums. Thank you very much.